Come see us doing live shows. We'll be in Los Angeles, Honolulu, Baltimore, Atlantic City, Cohoes, New York, Providence, Rhode Island. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets, and only jimmydore.com. So I just want to remind people about Syria. So now that's when I started to become fond of Tulsi Gabbard, because she was the only person in government that would tell the truth about the Syrian war. The Syrian war is we started it. Who's we? I mean NATO and the economic hitmen in the West and Saudi Arabia and Israel. So again, it's the same. So it's happening again. So as soon as they did a ceasefire with Lebanon, as soon as that happened, all of a sudden Al-Qaeda and ISIS are attacking in Syria again. Isn't that a coinky-dink? What you want to know about the sudden rebel gains in Syria's 13-year war and why it matters?
What? Is this an ad for a protein drink or something? Sudden rebel gains.
So this is exactly the same thing we did in Iraq, the exact same thing we did in Libya, the exact same thing we did in Yemen, Somalia. This is the exact same thing. 20 years of Afghan. This is it. This is Western imperialism aligned with the Saudis and Israel, and this is all about Turkey. This is all about natural resources. That's what this is all about.
Oh, and that's where, guess what? Our great deal with the Taliban, we left all our stuff there and gave them money on top of it.
That's right.
They also trained terrorists for us there.
That's right.
Such as the ones going to Syria.
So when we invaded Libya, we took the Libyan military, we took their stuff and we gave it to ISIS and Al-Qaeda to go fight in Syria. That's what we did. That's what the United States did.
Be somebody, we said.
So if you want to know so Jeffrey Sachs said this on MSNBC somewhere around 2018, 19. I'm not sure what the exact date is. But this is the only time you'll hear the truth ever spoken about Syria on national TV. And I don't think he's been invited back since. But here we go. I think this was it. This was him sealing his fate with MSNBC. They don't like to hear this stuff. So listen to what he said.
And we know they sent in the CIA to overthrow Assad. The CIA and Saudi Arabia together in covert operations tried to overthrow Assad. It was a disaster. Eventually it brought in both ISIS as a splinter group to the jihadists that went in. It also brought in Russia. So we have been digging deeper and deeper and deeper. What we should do now is get out and not continue to throw missiles, not have a confrontation with Russia. 7 years has been a disaster under Obama, continuing under Trump. This is what I would call the permanent state. This is the CIA, this is Pentagon, wanting to keep Iran and Russia out of Syria, but no way to do that. And so we have made a proxy war in Syria. It's killed 500,000 people, displaced 10 million. And I'll say predictably so, because I predicted it 7 years ago that there was no way to do this and that it would make a complete chaos. So what I would plead to President Trump is get out. Like his instinct told him, by the way. That was his instinct. But then all the establishment, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Pentagon, everybody said, no, that's irresponsible. But his instinct is right. Get out. We've done enough damage, 7 years. And now we really risk a confrontation with Russia that is extraordinarily dangerous, reckless.
Professor Sachs is correct.
So now this is an admiral, right, from the military-industrial complex. He's on the payroll, and he's going to try to sound. They're really experts. When a good liar is an expert at sounding reasonable. And watch, he's now going to talk about Syria, and he's going to try to make it sound like he's reasonable. Watch this.
This is a massive humanitarian disaster. I think the numbers are actually 600,000 dead and 14 million displaced. So I'm in complete agreement with him on the scale of this, but I would like to see the United States try and be part of the solution.
What United States? So that means keep the United States trying to overthrow another government in the Middle East. And the United States has to be part of the solution. We're the ones who caused the problem. So Jeffrey Sachs
Wow.
doesn't let this go by.
We're the virus
I
and
don't
the
think it's
cure.
attractive, but I think we have to understand how this happened. This happened because of us. These 600,000 are not just incidental. We started a war to overthrow a regime. It was covert. It was Timber Sycamore. People can look it up. The CIA operation, together with Saudi Arabia, still it's shrouded in secrecy, which is part of the problem in our country. A major war effort, shrouded in secrecy, never debated by Congress, never explained to the American people, signed by President Obama, never explained. And this created chaos. And so just throwing more missiles in right now is not a response.
My only concern...
We need to go, it's, by the way, not to walk away, to go to the UN Security Council, as the Admiral says, to agree with Russia on a strategy for ending the fight. But ending the fight means that we stop trying to overthrow a government, that we stop trying to support rebels who are committed to overthrowing the government. That is where this war continues, because we, to this day, back rebels that are trying to overthrow a government contrary to international law, contrary to the UN Charter, contrary to common sense, contrary to practical path. We can't do it. And it's just creating ongoing crisis to the extent of facing an imminent confrontation with Russia.
Now, you'll watch, places like the Young Turks, and they're all on board for this war, for Syria. And anybody who told the truth about it, they smeared and slandered and said they were being paid by Assad or they were being paid by Putin. That's what the Young Turks, that's what Cenk Uygur does.
Anna said that's what Aramate was. That's what kicked off that whole thing.
That's what kicked off the whole thing. With which then I would debunk what they were saying, because they were calling Aaron Mate paid by Russia, paid by Assad. And then I debunked that. And so Anna Kasparian, to get me to shut up, threatened to blackmail me with a fake hashtag #MeToo after she flashed her genitalia to the whole newsroom. And I made a joke about it. She then tried to do a fake sexual harassment thing. And nobody believed it. Even though it still ends up in
the plot of Wicked.
Yeah. Even though it ends up in my Wikipedia page, because the Wikipedia page is edited by the intelligence community, the same intelligence community that wants to do the Syrian war.
Wait, they put that on your Wikipedia that there was anything to that?
Yes.
Wow. Because why is she care if you talk about?
Have you looked at my Wikipedia? They still say I'm wrong about the Syrian war and the gas attacks, which of course I'm not.
Right.
The Syrian gas attacks are just as dumb as Russiagate, and they're just as easy to debunk. And we debunked them.
Well, remember the blonde lady in charge of that who said the truth gets in the way of getting things done?
That's right.
At her.
So that's what's going on. And how did this all start? Well, General Wesley Clark's going to tell you how this all... They'd had this plan to invade Syria, to invade Libya, to invade Somalia, to invade the Sudan, to invade Iraq and Iran. They've had this plan going back to at least 9/11, but before that. Yeah. And now they're doing it. And so here's a General Wesley Clark is going to tell you this right now.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who used to work for me. And one of the generals called me and he said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, No. He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, He said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, this is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
So they've had this plan for a long time, and they make it up. Oh, we have to save the people from Muammar Gaddafi. We have to save the people from Assad. We have to save the people from the Taliban. We have to save the people. It's always something. It's always.
Wait, is this the New World Order they were yammering about before this plan was discovered? You know, Russia had fallen, and now we're going to have a New World Order.
That's right.
We got to knock over all these countries, the third world.
And so as soon as there was a ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon, they immediately, because Israel sponsors ISIS, the United States sponsors al-Qaeda, they immediately made another push in this 13-year civil war. It's not a civil war. It's not a civil war. It's a war of outside actors funded by the United States CIA to the tunes of billions of dollars. And it's called Timber Sycamore. You can look it up, just like he said. And we're paying the salaries of al-Qaeda in Syria to try to overthrow Assad. Why? For the natural resources. Also, Saudi Arabia wants to put a pipeline through, and Russia, which is aligned with Syria, doesn't want that pipeline to go through. So it's Syria, Russia, and Iran are aligned. And Saudi Arabia and the United States, Turkey, and Israel are aligned, trying to overthrow Assad. Just like we overthrew Gaddafi, just like we overthrew Saddam Hussein, just like we overthrew the Taliban. Now they're trying to do it here. We're the ones. Just like we tried to overthrow, now I'm blanking on the guy's name in Venezuela, Maduro and Chavez. Same thing. This is because there's oil there. More oil in Venezuela than there is in Saudi Arabia. And so this is the same old game. But the news will never tell you that. That's the only time Jeffrey Sachs on MSNBC, they ever told the truth about Syria. So they have a new offensive, and they captured Aleppo, one of Syria's largest cities. It was and by the way, so they were going to attack 7 countries in 5 years. And apparently what's happened since, the first country they were going to start with was America, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I was going to say, did they George Soros Syria?
So it was the first opposition attack on Aleppo since 2016 when a brutal Russian air campaign retook the northwestern city. So they're trying to weaken Russia. So that's what this is. So they're fighting Russia in Ukraine, and they're fighting, I want to fight Russia in Syria. These are all proxy wars. Intervention by Russia, Iran, and Iranian allied Hezbollah and other groups has allowed Assad to remain in power within the 70% of Syria under his control. Remember that the United States still has an occupying force in 30% of Syria. And what 30%? The part that grows the wheat and the part that has the oil. Insurgents led by the jihadi group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham launched the 2-pronged attack on Aleppo last week and moved into the countryside around Idlib and neighboring Hama province. The Syrian military and its foreign allies have rushed reinforcements and launched airstrikes as they attempted to stall their momentum. Robert Ford, the last serving U.S. ambassador to Syria, pointed to months of Israeli strikes on Syrian and Hezbollah targets in the area and to Israel's ceasefire with Hezbollah in Lebanon last week as factors providing Syria's rebels with the opportunity. They're not Syria's rebels. They're rebels that are funded by Turkey, the United States, Saudi Arabia, and Israel. They're not Syrian. Russia, Assad's main international backer, is also preoccupied with this war in Ukraine. The long war between Assad and his foreign backers and the array of opposition forces seeking this is such a garbage article, this AP article. Assad is the guy with foreign backers, not
the rightful president of Syria. By the way, if you talk to Syrians, they like him.
Yes, they like him.
It's amazing. It's almost like the gap in like people that like Trump versus I can't believe Trump and his Russian backers. To them, they live there, so they like the guy. Like, I don't know why this is hard for people to understand. that you wouldn't have a kindly idea about America if they were paying terrorists to blow you up.
And so around 7 million Syrians have fled the country since this started, and a refugee flow that helped change the political map in Europe by refueling anti-immigrant far-right movements. So, yeah, so when we did Libya, we had bunch of refugees fled into Europe. When we did Syria, a bunch of refugees fled. When we did Iraq, that's what this is about. And just the other day, Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of the UK, said this was on purpose, that they had open borders. And now there are more people who are foreign-born immigrants in England than live there, than our natives.
It's a win-win.
Roughly 30% of the country not under Assad is controlled by a range of opposition forces and foreign troops. You like the United States military, asshole. This is an AP fucking article. The U.S. has about 900 troops in northeast Syria, far from Aleppo, to guard against a resurgence to get the oil.
We might have a resurgence anytime.
That's right.
Whenever we need one, there's going to be a resurgence.
Both the U.S. and Israel conduct occasional strikes in Syria, for kicks. There's no declaration of war on Syria, but the United States goes around bombing under the guise of the AUMF. What's the AUMF? It's called the Authorization for the Use of Military Force, which the Congress gave to George Bush to go fight the people who flew planes into the trade towers in 9/11. So now they use that to do Afghanistan, Iraq. They use that to do Libya, to do Syria. That's what they're using that. So Congress doesn't have to declare a war. Turkey has forces in Syria as well. Why? Why does Turkey have forces in Syria? And has influence with the broad alliance of opposition forces. So has influence. Yeah, because they're funding the terrorists who are terrorizing Syria.
They fund ISIS. That's why.
That's right.
Influence with. What is that influence? That's so vague.
Coming after years with few sizable changes in territory between Syria's warring parties, the fighting has the potential to be really quite consequential and potentially game-changing if Syrian government forces prove unable to hold their ground, said Charles Lister, a longtime Syrian analyst with the U.S.-based Middle East Institute. He said that before pausing a moment to wipe a small stream of drool from the side of his mouth.
The Middle East Institute.
The Middle East Institute. The U.S. and the UN have long designated the opposition force leading the attack in Aleppo, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, known for its initial HTS, as a terrorist organization. They're terrorists. Abu Mohammed al-Golani emerged as the leader of al-Qaeda's Syria branch in 2011. It was an unwelcome intervention to many of Syria's opposition, who hope to keep the fight amongst Assad's rule untainted by violent extremism. Okay, this is all bullshit.
Wow.
This was all started by the CIA, and the CIA's funding al-Qaeda and al-Nusra and ISIS and Golani. There are terrorists that the Pentagon is directly funding and terrorists that the CIA are funding. And often those two groups will fight each other.
We'll see who's the best.
In Syria. Golani and his group early on claimed responsibility for deadly bombings, pledged to attack Western forces, confiscated property from religious minorities, and sent religious police to enforce modest dress by women. Those are the people that the United States wants to take over, the people doing that. Golani and his HTS have sought to remake themselves in recent years, focusing on promoting civilian government in their territory as well as military action. Researchers, his group broke ties with al-Qaeda. Sure, really? Former al-Qaeda affiliate in Syria seeks to soften its brand.
Oh, like Azov.
They're going to soften its brand. I hear, and by the way, the Washington Post happy to help them soften their brand.
They should get that bear from the Snuggle fabric softener commercials. That snuggly bear.
So they're big.
Makes your fabric so soft.
They're trying to soften their brand. They're starting to sell LGBTQ merch. Kurt, did you hear about that?
Yeah, that's typically the way it's done. Can you imagine if they overthrow Assad? What a disaster that'll be.
That'll be a disaster.
Iran's bad. That's from the last time we overthrew got something much worse.
Yes.
You think somebody better is going to take over if Assad goes down?
By 2018, the Trump administration acknowledged it was no longer directly targeting Golani, but HTS has allowed some wanted armed groups to continue to operate on its territory and shot at U.S. Special Forces at least as recently as 2022. These are the people we're funding. At the crossroads of trade routes and empires for thousands of years, Aleppo, with its bustling neighborhoods and ancient landmarks in the 2010s, saw some of the fiercest fighting in Syria's civil war. It's not a civil war. Aleppo was home to 2.3 million people before the conflict. Rebels seized the east side of the city in 2012, and it became the proudest symbol of the advance of armed opposition factions. In 2016, government forces backed by Russian airstrikes laid siege to the city. Russian shells, missiles, and crude barrel bombs. Oh, not like the classy, sophisticated cluster bombs we give our allies to tear children to shreds in Yemen and elsewhere, but crude.
Wait, they leveled neighborhoods? You mean like Gaza?
They're crude.
Now that's wrong?
Crude. They should use...
What are these, cave bombs?
They should use... Right? Okay. And methodically leveled neighborhoods. Very much like Israel just did in starving and under siege, rebels surrendered Aleppo that year. The Russian military's entry was the turning point in the war, allowing Assad to stay in the territory he held.
Oh, that's why we hate them so much.
That's why. This year, Israeli airstrikes in Aleppo have hit Hezbollah weapons depots and Syrian forces, among other targets, according to independent monitoring group. Israel rarely acknowledges strikes at Aleppo. And right, you know why? Because it's illegal. It's an international war crime. Here, my friend Ashvin Ratanzi says, reminder, the so-called moderate rebels rampaging across Syria are U.S.-backed jihadists.
As are most jihadists. As are most of the jihadists.
Syrian opposition group that killed a child was a U.S.-vetted alliance.
Oh, you don't say.
Remember when Obama insisted that the United States was supporting moderate Syrian rebels and Jake Sullivan told Hillary Clinton that al-Qaeda is on our side in Syria? Amid the renewed extremist-fueled violence in Syria, it's time to take a look at the Obama-Biden legacy in the region. Here we go.
All of this had been in the works for quite a while, and I do believe that Obama knew that, even as he went to Cairo in the first year that he was in office back in 2009, and he called for a new beginning between the United States and Muslims around the world, one based on mutual interest and mutual respect. He knew that the world had just endured 8 years of the Bush administration and its so-called war on terror. Obama was presenting himself as an alternative, saying, here is a new beginning, right? I am going to be different. But he meant none of that. And even as he went on to target the exact same regions of the world that George W. Bush had just targeted, he did it all with Joe Biden, who had already spent a lifetime in Washington, by his side. In August of 2011, Obama announced sanctions against the entire Syrian government and called for Assad to step down. And in December of 2011, Biden was joining Obama in their new slogan, Assad must go. But Assad didn't go. And it did not matter what the U.S. threw at him, from mass protests to media propaganda to claims of chemical attacks carried out by the government to mass sanctions targeting the country. Assad stayed in power. He's still in power to this day. And that is even as the CIA launched Operation Timber Sycamore.
One of the problems with being told blindly to cheer on the Syrian revolution is that the key participants aren't even Syrian, as I've been telling you.
Yeah.
Uyghur-led Turkestan Islamic Party advertising its involvement in the insurgent offensive, participating in the battles extended from Sarkib and Idlib countryside to Morek in North Hama countryside. So this is Turkey's soldiers.
So those are Uyghurs, the oppressed Uyghurs.
Turkish fascist Grey Wolves are in Aleppo. There they are. Turkish ultranationalist Grey Wolves in Aleppo. They are tied to the far-right MHP party, known for their extreme pan-Turkish ambitions. Hadi says, so far I've seen videos from Aleppo of terrorists speaking Albanian, Uzbek, Turkish, Urdu, Uyghur, Chechen. Don't you dare compare these NATO mercenaries to the native resistance of Palestine. So this is not a civil war in Syria. It's hilarious that this is an argument made by, so this guy tries to contradict Aaron Mate. He says it's hilarious that this is an argument made by proponents of a government that is on life support and only survives due to the combined efforts of Lebanese, Iranian, Iraqi, and Afghan militias and the Russian government. He's talking about the Syrian government. And Aaron says, to apologists for the dirty war in Syria, meaning that it's being funded by the CIA, for the dirty war in Syria, it's perfectly legitimate for the CIA, Israel, Gulf monarchies, UK, France, Germany, and Turkey to spend tens of billions of dollars arming one of the most powerful insurgencies in history, one dominated by al-Qaeda, and one including thousands of fighters who aren't even Syrian. It's also legitimate for the United States to occupy oil and wheat-rich regions of Syria and impose crippling sanctions that deliberately prevent reconstruction of Syria and further devastate the country's civilian population. So he's saying that this guy is for this. Without this foreign state support, al-Qaeda, without Russia and Iran supporting Syria, al-Qaeda in Syria, now known as HTS, wouldn't have captured Idlib. I mean, without this foreign state support, meaning Israel, Saudi Arabia, Germany, the United States, Turkey, without them backing al-Qaeda in Syria, they wouldn't have captured Idlib and wouldn't have been able to launch its current offensive. According to this same crowd, the Syrian government has no right to request the help of its allies to prevent al-Qaeda-led foreign state-backed regime change. One would call this position hilarious if it weren't so tragic. For this dickhead, it's at least consistent. He works for a place called Newsline Mag, an organization that collaborates with the Pentagon, with the NED, which is the CIA, and State Department. For a journalist covering U.S. foreign policy, that's hilarious. And just to... Syrian army recaptures towns in Hama countryside as counteroffensive gains momentum. So good for the Syrian army. So I just wanted to give you that, let you know. There you go. We're doing it again. The United States are the world's terrorists. We're in bed with, we are funding literal terrorists that our own State Department have declared terrorists. Al-Qaeda, the people who did 9/11, we're working with them. We're the evil empire. It's not Russia. It's not Syria. It's not Iran. It's not Iraq. It's not Libya. It's not Afghanistan. It's the United States. We're the evil empire. It's not the people of America don't want this. It's the people who run America, which is the military-industrial complex and Wall Street. And of course, those same people have complete control of our media. Go ahead. What?
They do the same thing here. They brought in all these foreign military-age men to maybe have a they'll call it a civil war.
Yeah.
And it would be a bunch of people from other countries that we blew up here fighting America. It's the same playbook everywhere. They always talk about Putin playbook. They do the same thing in every part of the world, including this part of the world.
Okay, so now you know what's going on in Syria once again, and my Wikipedia page, which is edited by the FBI, the CIA, and MI6, is going to say, I'm a conspiracy theorist for telling you the truth, while they are the ones who are spreading conspiracies, just like Russiagate, just like the Ukraine war, just like COVID, and now this.
Well, nobody believes Wikipedia no more.
I hope not.
Desticuk.
One of the guys who founded Wikipedia said that the intelligence community has control of Wikipedia. I didn't make that up. That's
before I even knew that, I knew Wikipedia was no good because mine was all screwed up. At one point, I was inviting people to change it to try to make it.
Yeah, but they
funny.
just change it back.
No, a lot of wrong stuff still on my Wikipedia, and it's a long process.
Yeah, me
if you
too.
Want to get it fixed.
You can't get it fixed. There is no process to get it fixed.
You can't. You can't. I probably can't now because I know you.
You know, our sponsor, Colonial Metals Group, helped me with my goals of protecting my financial future. Being at the whim of the stock market or the current administration does not make me feel safe or secure, but having a self-directed IRA where I can safely store gold and silver assets that have stood the test of time, no matter what the economy or the government policies are, that makes sense to me. Colonial Metals Group has helped me create a self-directed IRA where I can have direct access to my assets. Let the team of experts at Colonial Metals Group help you protect your family's future. Their level of professionalism and ability to listen make it easy for you to learn everything you need to know about preserving all you've worked for. Maybe you're just getting started, or maybe you're already in a 401k or an IRA, or you're thinking about your parents' retirement. Regardless, Colonial Metals Group can help. We put together a special offer for our audience. Click now on the link in the description below or call our special 800 number. You can receive a safe and up to $7,500 in free silver. So go to colonialmetalsgroup.com/Jimmy-Dore-show or call 888-910-1419. That's colonialmetalsgroup.com/Jimmy-Dore-show or 888-910-1419. Come see us doing live shows. We'll be in Los Angeles, Honolulu, Baltimore, Atlantic City, Cohoes, New York, Providence, Rhode Island. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets, and only jimmydore.com.